Hello together. Today we speak about medical affairs planning and practice, from strategy to implementation. My name is Gerd Möller. I'm spokesman of the Medical Affairs Division of the German Society for Pharmaceutical Medicine, and I'm also lecturer at Grenoble École de Management. Today is not about theory. It is about tools you can use on Monday morning. Medical affairs is at an inflection point. More is demanded, more is scrutinized, and more must be demonstrated. In the next half an hour, I will give you a structured framework that transforms planning from an annual ritual into a strategic operating system. The 32-element Medical Affairs Master Plan is the result of 2 decades of practice and a formal research program we performed at the German Pharmaceutical Medicine Society. We published it in December 24. Everything we discuss today is practically tested and immediately applicable. The views are my own, not those of any employer, past or present. This is not legal or regulatory advice. It is strategic guidance grounded in real-world medical affairs leadership. About myself, I worked more than 20 years at the intersection of clinical medicine, health economics, and medical affairs across big pharma, rare disease, CRO, and consumer health environments. I'm also first author of this 32-element map framework we published in December 24, and this is the evidence base for today's session. I'm also trained in orthopedic surgery and trauma surgery and also emergency medicine. And in my spare time, I mentor and teach medical affairs. Agenda of today. We have 6 blocks for about 30 minutes. And every block ends with something you can implement immediately. Block 1, we expose the medical affairs paradox, busy but invisible. Blocks 2 and 3, we define the map, medical affairs plan, and its 32-element architecture. This is a strategic blueprint. Block 4 and 5, we go operational, implementation roadmap, governance, and KPIs that actually measure impact. Block 6, we look ahead. HTA evolution, artificial intelligence, uncertainty communication, and the future ready map. The medical affairs value question. This first block asks the hardest question in medical affairs. Are we creating value or are we creating activity? The answers matters more than ever because leadership is asking it and budget as a consequence. The medical affairs paradox. 95% of MSL interaction completed, advisory boards delivered, reports submitted, and yet leadership questions the strategic contribution. This is the medical affairs paradox. Comprehensive operational delivery with limited strategic visibility. We trained ourselves to answer the wrong question. How many instead of so what? When a CEO or general manager asks what was the actual impact on patient outcomes, and the answer is silence, that silence costs budgets. The medical affairs plan is a structural solution to this paradox, not a communication fix, a governance fix. Activity versus impact measures. The distinction that repositions medical affairs. Activity metrics count what was done. Impact measures track what changed as a result. The shift from MSL visits to percent of HCPs who changed clinical decision making requires no extra budget, only a different question. Publication submissions are vanity metrics. Clinical uptake of published evidence in real-world practice is a value metric. Medical information request handled is a workload number. Reduction in off-label inquiries after HCP education is a behavioral outcome. You cannot reposition medical affairs as strategic without repositioning how it is measured. Start with the measurement. The 4R Behavioral Impact Framework. I would like to give you the model and to make it memorable. 4 questions, 1 framework. Reach. Who did we engage? Resonance. Did they understand? Response. Did they change? Results. Did patients benefit? Reach without resonance is broadcast. Resonance without response is education. Response without results is process. Results are what we are paid for. Message recall at 4 weeks is a resonance KPI. Diagnosis rate change is a response KPI. Patient-reported outcomes are results KPIs. Every KPI in our current dashboard should map to one of the 4 R's. If it maps to none, remove it. This is a framework I use with students and also especially with MSL teams in the field. It works because it is simple, logical, and impossible to game. What is the MAP, the Medical Affairs Plan? Now that we agree on what to measure, we need the architecture that produces those outcomes systematically. The Medical Affairs Plan is that architecture. Let me show you exactly what it is and why structure is everything. What is the Medical Affairs Plan? Definition, purpose, and why it matters. The MAP is a master strategic document that defines how medical affairs creates, delivers, and demonstrates scientific and clinical value across the entire product lifecycle. It is not an annual filing exercise. It is a living system integrating 32 core elements across 5 structural domains. Purpose: translate strategy into executable plans where every initiative traces back to a patient or a stakeholder need. Companies with structured, cross-functionally aligned medical affairs plans achieve 27% higher goal attainment. That's the data we have published in our publication end of 24. Without a map, medical affairs optimizes activities. With a map, medical affairs plan, it optimizes outcomes, and that is the difference. Why the medical affairs plan needs a structured architecture? The cost of planning without structure. Without structure, MSL activities are disconnected from strategy. Health economic outcome research runs in isolation. The medical value story is inconsistent across functions. HTA rejections driven by absent real-world evidence are a direct consequence of reactive planning, not scientific failure. With the 32-element medical affairs plan, every initiative traces back to a patient need, and cross-functional governance is built into the planning circle. The medical affairs plan replaces cross-functional misalignment with joint accountability, and that is its most powerful organizational function. Leadership sees behavioral outcomes, not activity counts. That is how medical affairs earns its seat at the strategic table. Stakeholder-specific impact. Different stakeholders, different definitions of value. That's highly important. HCPs needs quality scientific exchange and support for treatment decisions, not volume of MSL visits. Patient need quality informed consent, trial access, improved disease understanding, outcomes, not outputs. Payers and health technology assessment bodies need value dossier quality, real-world evidence relevance, and health economic data. Evidence that passes HTA scrutiny. Regulators require post-approval surveillance study compliance, label intelligence, and pharmacovigilance interaction quality. If your MAP medical affairs plan does not differentiate its impact definition by stakeholder group, it is not stakeholder-centric, it is function-centric. The 32-element blueprint. Enter the architecture. The 32-element framework is a result of systematic review of medical affairs planning practice, published evidence, and 20 years of operational experience. Think of it as a periodic table of medical affairs planning. Every element has a function, and none can be omitted without weakening the whole. The 32-element medical affairs master plan. This is the architecture overview. We have 5 structural domains: foundational documentation, situational analysis, strategic planning, operative implementation, and special areas, with cross-cutting elements for risk, budget, and KPIs. Domain A anchors everything: vision, mission, critical success factors, and the medical value story as keystone. Domain B is the analytical engine: therapeutic landscape, patient journey, SWOT, PESTLE, no strategy without situational intelligence. Domain C translates intelligence into direction: medical strategy, strategic drivers, health economic evidence, and HTA strategy. Domains D and E bring it to life: initiative planning, resource allocation, scientific expert partnerships, digital and real-world evidence. Operational reality, not aspirational list. The medical value story, keystone of the blueprint. The most misunderstood concept in medical affairs. The medical value story is not a slide deck. It is not a communication tool. It is a strategic foundation from which all medical affairs activity derives coherence. It integrates clinical efficacy, safety, patient-reported outcomes, and health economics into one coherent, scientifically rigorous narrative. Same scientific core, different emphasis for HCPs, payers, patients, and regulators. Adaptation, not contradiction. Critical is, it is not built at launch. It is built from phase 2 studies and continuously evolved as evidence matures. Lateness is structural failure. If you test your medical value story with 5 HCPs and 1 payer and the response is lukewarm, rebuild it. That is call to action number 4. The 360-degree situational analysis. Outside in meets inside out. That's the integrated strategy. Two complementary perspectives. Outside-in gathers intelligence from HCPs, patients, competitors, regulators, and HTA bodies. Inside-out synthesizes internal data, aligns the scientific narrative, assesses capabilities, and positions the portfolio. Scientific expert mapping is an outside-in activity. Systematic identification based on clinical expertise and research contribution, not relationship history. Integration of both perspectives produces the only analysis worth building strategy on. 360-degree situational intelligence. A pastel analysis without regulatory horizon scanning is incomplete. A SWOT without competitive landscape mapping is guesswork. Implementation roadmap. From planning to execution. Strategy without execution is fiction. This block is about making the medical affairs plan real through a structured 5-phase roadmap and cross-functional governance. The 5-phase implementation roadmap. Phase 1, preparation and foundations. Define scope, stakeholders, governance, and run the kick-off workshop. Phase 2, analysis and strategy. Execute the 360-degree situation analysis, set mission and vision, define SMART objective. Phase 3, planning and design. Map initiatives, plan resources, allocate budget. This is where most plans are generally built. Phase 4, execution and alignment. Cross-functional implementation with tracking activated from day one. Phase 5, review and optimize. Quarterly KPI review, adaptive replan, medical affairs plan updated. The most common failure is jumping from phase 1 directly to phase 4, skipping analytical rigor entirely. Cross-functional alignment, the key success factor. Medical affairs succeeds through orchestration, not in isolation. R&D, we have to do evidence alignment, clinical development program input, study design. This connection must be formalized, not assumed. Market access and health technology assessment. Value dossier support, payer evidence needs, HTA pre-submission meetings built into the medical affairs plan from phase 2. Regulatory affairs, label intelligence, post-approval surveillance study, and pharmacovigilance interactions, pre-aligned before any scientific communication goes live. Patient advocacy, insight integration, trial recruitment support, patient voice integration into the medical value story. Practical imperative, formalize at least 3 of these connections with regular touchpoints, shared objective, and joint accountability, not courtesy meetings, governance. Resource optimization, do more of the right things. Prioritization, not more resources. The decisive lever is strategic prioritization, not headcount expansion or budget increase. Spreading resources equally across too many initiatives is the single most common waste pattern in medical affairs planning. Impact multiplied by effort prioritization metrics. Every initiative is scored before resource allocation. What scores low on impact regardless of effort, stop it. Digital leverage enables scale without proportional cost. This is the only way to expand reach under budget constraint. Quarterly resource review embedded in governance calendar. Reallocation triggered by data, not by urgency or hierarchy. Performance management and KPIs. Measurement that matters. Everything we have built means nothing without a measurement system that captures behavioral outcomes, not activity volume. The three-tier KPI architecture, strategically aligned, operationally actionable. Tier 1, strategic KPIs for senior leadership. Medical affairs contribution to evidence-based treatment recommendations. Time to guideline inclusion post-authorization. Differentiated evidence advantage versus competitor. Tier 2, functional KPIs for medical affairs management. HCP scientific exchange quality score, insight generation rate, and actioned percentage scientific expert engagement depth index. Tier 3, operational KPIs at MSL and team level. Call quality versus coverage ratio, on-time delivery of medical materials, medical information response quality. Each tier reports to a different audience. Never show Tier 3 metrics to the board. Never hide Tier 1 metrics from the field. The architecture works because accountability is matched to the level where decisions are made. The governance rhythm, heartbeat of medical affairs excellence. KPIs without a review system are just good intentions. Weekly cadence, MSL interaction logs, field insight capture, medical information queue management, operational health monitoring. Monthly review, functional team check, initiative tracking, budget versus actuals. The most impactful single governance action you can introduce today. Quarterly leadership dashboard, strategic KPI review, cross-functional alignment check, where adaptive replanning decisions are made. Annual full medical affairs plan review, strategic landscape rescan, resource allocation, medical value story update. Single most impactful action you can take this week, introduce the monthly check-in. It prevents small problems compounding unseen into strategic failures. Continuous improvement, the adaptive medical affairs plan. A plan that cannot adapt is not a plan, it's a prediction. The PDCA circle, plan, do, check, act. Applied to the medical affairs plan creates adaptive map cycle, a living governance loop. Every quarterly review must produce at least one formal change to the initiative portfolio, resource allocation, or medical value story. If 3 consecutive reviews produce no changes, the review is not working, or the plan has become a filing exercise. The trigger for adaptive replanning is data, not instinct. KPI gaps, insight synthesis, HTA landscape shifts. Agility is not the presence of planning. It is the speed at which a plan responds to validated new information. Overcoming common organizational challenges. Practical solutions from real-world medical affairs leadership. Organizational silos. Cross-functional workshop at each planning phase. RACI matrices and formal embedding of medical affairs in cross-functional planning teams, not as a guest. Leadership buy-in. Perform monthly execute brief translating medical affairs impact into clinical outcomes. HTA acceptance and guideline adoption, the language of the C-suite. Limited resources, impact multiplied by effort matrix. Potential co-investment models with R&D and digital leverage for scale. Regulatory complexity, horizon scanning built into the governance rhythm, pre-alignment with legal and regulatory before communication goes live. Rapid market changes, Perform agile 90-day planning cycles with pre-agreed trigger criteria for resource allocation, not reactive scrambling. Real-world practice and future outlook. The horizon. Everything we have covered is already operational in leading medical affairs organization. This final block is about what comes next and how to build for it now. Communicating scientific uncertainty with credibility. Credibility is built through transparency, not projected certainty. HCPs and patients expect certainty. Science rarely delivers it. Medical affairs must manage this gap professionally and proactively. Replace some uncertainty exists with 90% confidence interval. Frame uncertainty relative to the clinical decision. Small absolute uncertainty may be clinically irrelevant. Context is everything. Share the evidence generation roadmap. Uncertainty with a resolution date is far more acceptable than uncertainty without one. We don't know yet is not weakness, it is honesty, and it builds long-term trust with HCPs, patient and HTA buddies. The future-ready medical affairs plan. Artificial intelligence, digital and key trends. 6 trends need to be embedded in every medical affairs revision circle. Agentic artificial intelligence, literature screening, insight synthesis, and MSL briefing automation are already operational, freeing human capital for strategy, relationship, and judgment. Real-world evidence demands. Federated learning, patient registries, and wearable data streams are redefining what HTA bodies expect. Embed real-world evidence planning from clinical phase 2 studies. Omnichannel engagement. HCPs expect seamless digital and face-to-face experience. Medical affairs must orchestrate the ecosystem, not just participate in it. Local excellence. Global strategy must adapt to national HTA processes, local guidelines, and regional care structures. One size fits all is structurally obsolete. Advanced analytics, NLP-driven insight capture, and predictive scientific expert network analysis are transitioning from optional to core medical affairs competencies. Your call to action. Start sooner than later. 5 actions, no theory, Monday morning. Action number 1. Medical Affairs Plan Audit. Test your current medical affairs plan against the 32-element framework. Identify your top 3 structural gaps in writing today. Action 2. Replace 3 activity metrics. Substitute them with behavioral impact indicators in your next leadership report. Do not add, replace. Action 3. Schedule a cross-functional workshop with R&D, regulatory affairs, and market access. A structured workshop with outputs, not a meeting. Action 4. Validate your medical value story. Test it with 5 HCPs and 1 payer. Rebuild it immediately if the response is lukewarm. Action 5. Embed a real-world evidence plan. Anchor it in the medical affairs plan with clear milestones and at least 1 HTA pre-submission meeting in the diary. Summary. The 5 building blocks of medical affairs excellence. Everything now distilled into one slide. Building block number 1. Measure what matters. Replace activity metrics with the 4R behavioral impact framework. Stakeholder-specific impact definitions drive stakeholder-specific plans. Building block 2. Build a structured medical affairs plan. 32 elements, 5 domains, living document. Every initiative traces back to a patient or stakeholder need. Building block 3, medical value story as keystone, not a communication asset. Built from phase 2 studies, clinically, economically, and also patient relevantly grounded. Building block 4, execute through cross-functional governance. 5-phase roadmap, formalized connections, 3-tier KPI architecture, monthly check-in as anchor. Building block 5, build for the future, real-world evidence from phase 2, uncertainty communicated proactively, artificial intelligence and HTA evolution addresses in every map revision cycle. Conclusions. This is to lend the message. A structured medical affairs plan is a strategic necessity, not an administrative preference. We found that 27% higher goal attainment is a measured consequence. Impact requires a different measurement language. The shift from counting visits to measuring behavioral outcomes requires no additional budget, only a different question. Medical affairs has never mattered more. Adaptive HTA pathways, mandatory real-world evidence milestones, and the European HTA regulation place medical affairs at the center of the evidence agenda. A well-built medical affairs plan turns that complexity into a scientific and clinical advantage for patients. That is the strategic case for excellence. The medical affairs plan is not a document you file, it is a strategic blueprint you live by. And one last thing. My wife and myself, we are writing at the moment a practical handbook of medical affairs. It will have 19 chapters, approximately 500 pages, and it's published probably Q4 26 or Q1 27 by a renowned scientific publisher. It combines strategic depth with operational precision across a full medical affairs spectrum, and the mission is to close the gap between the theory and the practical application in the pharmaceutical life science industry. We believe it will be the first comprehensive standard work of its kind and designed to set the industry benchmark for medical affairs excellence. If you want to be notified on publication, connect with me on LinkedIn. Finally, I thank you for your attention and your engagement throughout the session. You find my contact details below. Thank you very much. And the key takeaway is the medical affairs plan is not a document you file, it is a strategic blueprint you live by. Thank you for your attention.